Riffical Records presents the East-West Vinyl Analysis with your hosts Mark Anthony Kay and Ken Keenan. Greetings everyone to episode 16 of the East-West Vinyl Analysis. It's been almost a month, so it looks like we're starting to keep a decent schedule. So that's good, and let's hope it continues from there. This month, we have something rather interesting to do for you all. But before I get started in talking about it, I of course must have to say hello to my friend and co-host, Mr. Ken Keenan. Hello, Ken. How are you doing?
I'm good, Mark. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. It's nice weather here. No humidity. We're, having some nice weather to hang out and do stuff outside for once. I hear it's the opposite in your neck of the woods.
A little hot. Yeah, about 95 or so. We're going to semi-heat wave. It's bearable, but you need air conditioning, so luckily I have that.
Yes. I'd imagine most people in California own air conditioning.
Oh, sure. Yeah, definitely.
Yes. Okay, so after that little bit of information about California, we will move on to our idea for this month. So this is something that we're going to maybe do maybe the next couple of episodes, maybe every other episode. We're not sure yet, but I think we're going to do it more often than not because this is going to be a sort of interesting little miniature tournament that we're going to do here. In the sense that we're going to take a look at some of our records and whittle down between a bunch of them to see which one do we think is the strongest album in our collection. We're calling this the East-West Vinyl Analysis Classic Album Showdown. So what we're going to do is each episode we're going to pick two records that me and Ken both own, and we're going to break it down into 5 categories. We're going to discuss them with you guys, give our opinions on what each one, how it relates to us, what would we think of each thing, and it'll be ranked out of 5. 5 being we think it's the best in this topic, or one it's not the best. So for example, one of the categories will be album art. Does this album have is it a 5, the album art, or is it a 1? We give our opinion and we, mark it down. Obviously, you can make it a 3 or a 4 or a 2. It's not just 5 or 1, obviously. And then we go through each category, we add it all up, and then we, look at our final results. And we either look at it and are in shock at what we discovered, or we're not in shock. And then we'll just discuss the records a little bit more about, how the records impacted us, and maybe talk about some of the pressings we have of these records. So, of course, to start off the first one, we have to pick 2 bands that are, very well known. And of course, to me, this is a great, it saddens my heart to have to do these 2 bands because both of them are so important to me. One of them being a Canadian band and one of them being a British band, and you know how much I love Britain. Everything from the music, the culture, the television shows, the food, everything I love about Britain. So Britain to me is as, important to me almost as Canada, so this makes this very heartbreaking to me. So I'll pick one of the records that we're going to do, and Ken will show the other one. So since I'm Canadian, I'll show the Canadian one, and Julian and Ken can show the other record. So the one record that we're going to do, the one combatant is Rush 2112 from 1976, their big breakthrough record. And Mr. Ken Keenan has...
And your other album is PINK FLOYD, Dark Side of the Moon, released in 1973. So that's the other record.
Oh boy. Now,
it's a big battle this one's going to be.
This is like a heavyweight battle. Now, I know already some people are probably saying to themselves, what are they talking about? There's no way this is going to be a big battle. Well, in some categories, maybe not. But in other ways, I think that it's going to be very tight, at least for me. Maybe for Ken not. This is what's going to be so great about this, is we're going to see what we think about this, So how about we get started with the first category. And the first category up, and I'll flash it up here on the screen, is album art. Don't worry, I'll put that in after. Album art. And from the two records, let's talk about first the Rush record. Okay, so very simplistic, very, not too much to it. Space, a red star, the logo, and the album title. Hugh Syme, of course, was the one who did this album cover for them, much like he's did pretty much every single Rush album cover that ever has been done. He has been done by him. So very sparse for a Hugh Syme album cover, in my opinion. If you take a look at some of the other album covers he's done, like Farewell to Kings or Permanent Waves or any of these other album covers that he's been involved with, it's like just way more complicated covers than this. But I would venture to say that anybody around the globe will probably identify this album cover and know what this is. Even if you took this part of it off and just put that there, I think most people would know what band and what record this is.
Yeah.
Now, do you agree or disagree?
Well, I agree up to a point. People who are into music, yes, they're gonna, or even into 70s, 80s, back then, classic rock. They should know this band. They probably didn't know it way back then when they first came out, but as of this point, where the band is, they're in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and so on, I would think they would know or have seen that album cover.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that.
Yeah.
But you make an interesting point. Now, are you, are you saying that the Pink Floyd cover is maybe a little bit more well known globally than this cover?
Yeah, I think it is a little bit more. I think, because it's probably been out there and it's sold so well over time from the beginning up till, up to now. And I'm sure people have seen this prism look, even on people's T-shirts and things. Sometimes you see and so on. So I'm gonna guess this is more familiar to people than the Rush cover. Yeah.
Yeah. Now, of course, Hypnosis were the ones who did that
Hypnosis.
album cover. I'm not sure if you saw the behind the music kind of thing, or there was also like a sort of like a making of special that came out about the Dark Side of the Moon, and one of the guys from Hypnosis was talking about how he brought out various album covers for the band to look at, and it was pretty much he just laid them out on the table and they just looked at it and right away just said that one there, and just like immediately picked the prism image. So even for them, it seemed like this was something that was right away identifiable or eye-catching to them. So I guess that they were right in that sense, because like you said, I think most people around the world know that image and can identify it to Pink Floyd. Even if they've probably never heard a single song off that record, they know it's Pink Floyd, right? So
yeah.
Now, with that said, what would you give, for example, the Rush 2112 album cover out of 5? What would you say you would score that?
The cover, Rush 2112, I gave it a 4.
Okay.
Because I think it's a great cover. It kind of leads you to it's a gatefold. It has the lyrics inside, here's the inside. It has the lyrics, I think, right there. Picture of the band, a few and then more of the logo. And the backside has the little story, or little thing written there that's related to the 2112 theme, with another picture. So it's kind of a cool, different looking, space kind of cover. So I think it represents what they're talking about. I mean, they talk about the red star in this couple paragraphs on the back there.
Yeah.
The Federation. So I think it's a pretty cool cover. Like I say, it's the greatest cover ever, or anything like that. I mean, they could have embossed it. They could have made it a little bit slicker, I guess, but I think it does the job.
Yeah, I think so. Of course, with the timeline being important as well, when you said they could have embossed and this and that, that album for Rush was pretty much their last hit at bat as far as their record label was concerned, because they had done so poorly with Corrosive Steel before that they were ready to drop Rush. So, and this album, they pretty much went ahead with the whole thinking that, you know what, we're just going to make a record that we want, screw the label, and that's it. So I don't think if they wanted to do an embossed, cover, the label would have probably taken a chance at that point. I think everything after this point, I think they would have probably, let them do what they pretty much wanted. But at that point, it's probably a no-go. But as far as my ranking for it, I have to agree. I also gave it a 4 out of 5. I mean, to put something in a 5, in my opinion, has to be something very standoutish, like, top shelf, as they say, for album cover and artwork. And since we're not just talking about the cover, we're also talking about, like you said, the gatefold, the inside part, the story in the back. So there's other things that you have to take into consideration when you talk about album art, right? Now, when we get over to the Dark Side of the Moon side of things, now I have, and I'm not sure what you have there, this is my copy here, Dark Side of the Moon, and this is a Canadian press of it.
Okay.
And it's done. It was mastered at Capitol by Wally, the good old Wally.
Wally, yeah.
Print there. So he did the mastering and stuff like that for it. And I think it's a reissue, but I think it's sometime in the 80s reissue, though. Like, it's pretty early. I don't think it's a first press, but it's pretty close, right? I'm not sure what version you have.
Well, I have a US version.
Yeah.
And it is mastered at Capitol, or by Capitol. This one was a 73 pressing.
Oh, nice.
US pressing. So I don't know if it's considered a first, or I don't know if it says Wally or something else, but I believe I wrote down, or I think the one, who was it? Well, it's mastered by Bob Ludwig, supposedly. But I don't see an RL on here. There's some other scribbliness, but it doesn't look like Wally. That's what's funny about it. I'm not sure what that scribble is. Could be someone else too.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting to make note before we get it.
I'm sorry. I was looking at the wrong one, actually. Bob Ludwig, that was the Rush one, actually. But
oh, really?
Ken Perry.
Ah, okay.
Ken Perry was the person that I think mastered this one. So
very nice.
Anyway.
Well, it's interesting that your 2112 album, it was a Robert Ludwig one, you said, right?
Yeah.
And I'm guessing that's the Skyscraper label, center labels on yours, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Because I have quite a few copies, but the one that I picked out was my favorite one, and this is my Canadian reissue on Anthem.
Oh, Anthem? Yeah.
And this one,
right.
The reason why I picked this one out, why I like it so much, oh yeah, there you go. There's the classic
Skyscraper.
Mercury.
Yeah.
The reason why I picked out this one is because this one has an interesting mastering job or lacquer cut job, because side one of this has it done by J. It says, like, it's just a J, and it's McClare Sound, which is a big studio in Toronto. And the flip side of it was done at the Lacquer Channel. So each side has a different pressing done. It's like a different stamper for each side.
Oh, well, this, you know what? Now that you say that, I don't know why we thought it was Robert Ludwig, but anyway, this one here is GK.
Ah, Gilbert Kong.
Gilbert Kong on one side, but it has an HW on the other side.
Oh, Howie Weinberg.
So
there you go.
Two different. Yeah.
That's another good one. I have one like that. I don't think it's that album, but I have a split one like that. I think it was my Moving Pictures or something like that. It was another one that I had that was a split. Maybe not that late. I think it was maybe Progressive Steel. But in any case, we're getting off topic here with this. But Dark Side of the Moon rating. I'm gonna go for my rating first, since you went first on the other one. I'm gonna say right at the bat that even though it would probably appear that I would never put Rush like under anybody else, but I have to say that I have to give Dark Side of the Moon a 5 on this album cover. Not just only because of the cover, because of the points that you made out, but because of the whole package as well. It's so iconic. And I don't know if your copy came with some of these goodies that came in. I know the reissues that came out in the 2000s now, the newest ones, had some of those things reissued with them, like the postcards and the posters and stuff like that came with the album. My Canadian one does not have it, but I have another version of it that does have all those things in it. So, I mean, when you think about it, back in that time to have an album come out that had all these things in it, as well as a iconic album cover, I mean, you have to give it a 5, don't you?
Well, for the album cover?
Yeah.
Well, I gave it a 4 on that one, too.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Because, you know, I was kind of going back and forth about it, but it's an iconic cover, yes, but I think the cool thing about it is it's so simple, simplistic, but stands out. But the way they took the prism colors, the rainbow, through the middle of the gatefold was very cool. They did that, you know, and then with the heartbeat they added there, which is like you hear, you know, at the beginning of the album. So I think it's cool, but I just couldn't pick one over the other one. I just couldn't. I had a hard time. Though it did. I mean, okay, if you say packaging, maybe it is better. Original packaging, because it does. This one does have the postcards in it, and I think the poster in it.
Oh, really? Eh?
Yeah, on this one. Yeah.
Look at you.
So that was the reason I bought it, because it had that. But so yeah, I don't know, but I ranked them the same.
Huh. I'm honestly surprised about that. I thought for sure that you were going to say that was, you know, because just based on how you were discussing it earlier.
Oh,
saying,
yeah.
You know, how it is, you know,
I know.
more known and this and that. I thought maybe
It's
for
more
sure,
known.
okay, it's going to be a 5
Still.
for Ken.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's interesting. So as of right now, you have them tied at 4 apiece, and I have Pink Floyd ahead by 1, just after the album art. So let's go to the next category, which is songs. Now, what I mean by that is specifically, what do we think of the songs on this record? You know, do we think that there's some weak songs on here? Maybe not. The whole thing is great. You know, should they have done something different with the track order? Like, I mean, how do you feel that this record flows? Let's start with the Rush.
The Rush one? Well, it has a great flow, at least at the first half. I mean, it starts off great with the whole kicking, spacey sounding, you know, at the beginning, and then then the guitars coming in, and the, what do you call it? The what do they call that? The intro part, the overture.
Yeah.
That is so cool. I mean, to do that, it's like when you do it in a movie. I used to always do overtures at the beginning of movies and things like that. So it's a cool beginning, and then it flows right into the story, into the next song, and it just kind of flows through, and it flows very well. But then you flip it over, and it's kind of it doesn't flow as well. I mean, it's more your standard kind of one-off songs that they were doing maybe on Fly By Night or that, because Crest of Steel was not that way really.
Yeah.
But while they're good songs, they don't totally flow. I mean, like the first side does. It changes up to some mellower stuff in the middle with lessons and like tears, but it's just a total difference or change or about face from the first side of the album. So it's kind of, from that standpoint, it doesn't flow from side to side. These sides kind of stand on their own, I guess you could say.
Mm. Yeah. And I mean, I have to agree with a lot of that. I mean, the side one is like a work of art. I mean, it's a perfect. I won't say perfectly, but it's a well constructed story. I'm sure if they had the funds to make a double vinyl of this, they probably would have wrote it and expanded the story a bit more than they did.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But I think that the way it is, it's good. I mean, if you want to get a really good version of this to follow the story even better, I highly recommend the 20th anniversary, or is it 25th anniversary of 2112 on DVD CD, because it has when you put the DVD version of the record in, you get it not only in 5:1, but it also has this animation of the whole story beginning to end in comic form, which is just amazing. That just shows the whole story. So, but we're talking about the vinyl pressing, so we got to ignore that. But yeah, so side A, I think, is fantastic. I agree that side B does not have the same flow. I'm going to go as far as to say that side B contains one of my favorite Rush songs, which is Passage to Bangkok, which is just amazing. I love that song. I've always loved it. But it does have a few songs that I kind of consider maybe even fillers. Twilight Zone is not a bad song. I think that's okay. It does have a little bit of a weird verse to it, that whole do to it. But after that, like Lessons to me just seems like a complete, like, they didn't know what else to write. They just probably took a song from their catalog that they had left over and used that. I know it's an Alex Lifeson written song, so that could say something as well. That's just a sole right from him. And Tears for me has never done anything. That was always been a hard skip for me, to be honest. I've never liked that song, and Something for Nothing it's good. I always thought that was a interesting song, and it was one of the songs that actually made me want to go out and buy a 12-string guitar, because I love that introduction to that song. So it's an interesting album. I think it's safe to say that side one is what saved it for them. It's what side A is the part that became iconic for them. Although a lot of people do hold Passage to Bangkok dear to their hearts, as I do, but I still think side A is the stronger side. So between me and you, I'm gonna go first and say that my song ranking of this is, I gave this a 3.5.
Okay.
So what did you rank this album?
To answer your question about the Rush ranking for the songs on 2112, I ranked them a 4. The music, the songs, yes. I gave it a 4.
Very, very interesting.
And like what you're saying, it would have been nice, and probably would have given a better rating, if they just had enough more music to make 2112 into a full album. If they could have like added 10 more minutes maybe music, right? Because that was like 10 minutes or so of more music, they could have got rid of that whole second side of what's there currently and just had a 2112, you know, first side overture and then finale on the second half or whatever, you know.
Yeah, yeah.
It could have been one solid theme throughout the album.
Yeah, exactly. I agree with that wholeheartedly. I think that's why a record like Clockwork Angels, which was the last studio record they made, was so excellent because it was a story beginning to end on that album. So and it flowed really nicely, and I think a lot of people were stunned how good that record was, especially since it was their last record, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, but anyways, yeah. So in recapping, I gave it a 3.5. You gave it a 4. So
yeah.
So you ranked it higher than I did, which is very interesting. But in any case, that's how you ranked it, and there's no going back. It is now official.
No going back.
So now let's take a look at the Floyd record now. Dark Side of the Moon, the songs. Now, this to me is what I like to refer to as a near perfect record. This record has one disadvantage that got fixed later on in the 80s. And that is this album is not as good a listening experience on vinyl as it is on CD, because the fact that you're listening to this now and right at the end of The Great Gig in the Sky is done, and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I gotta get up now, flip it. You're in the mood, you're laying back on your sofa and just chilling out listening to it. Now you gotta get up and flip it, and on CD it's an all embodying experience listening to this album from beginning to end. You don't have to get up or nothing. You just let the CD play, and CD to me is the format that I think really lends to it. Now I know a lot of people are going to say, boo, what the hell is this idiot talking about? Vinyl is the way to listen to it, right? But I'm just saying that's why I think it's better on CD. Now, that's not the only reason why I call it a near perfect record. There's a little something on here called Any Color You Want on here, which is on side B, which to me personally, I find is just, it could have ditched that. Really, I mean, to me, it's just a jam thing. It's just some very psychedelic music going on, and to me, I kind of look at it as they had a kind of difficult way of maybe splicing together, or finding a way to bridge, out of some of the songs before into the last ending of the record, right? Because I mean, if you think about it, when you listen to what was going on before that, I mean, the side B starts off with Money, right, and then Us and Them, and then you go into Any Color You Like, right?
Right.
Now, to me, that instrumental is just a bridgehead into Brain Damage, right? Because it goes right into it from there. But I keep thinking to myself, if you were to take Any Color You Like out of there, and on the fade out of Us and Them, put some sort of another ambient thing in there, just a quick 10-second thing, and then go right into Brain Damage, I think I would have liked it better than that. Because I mean, to me, that's just my opinion. I mean, you could totally disagree with that. You may actually love Any Color You Like, and that's no problem to me. I mean, that's your thing, right? But personally, I think that other than that, I mean, side A is absolutely flawless.
Oh yeah.
Speak to Me, Breathe, On the Run, Time, Great Gig in the Sky. I mean, there's nothing on side A that's worth skipping. And I mean, one of the great things that I heard about Floyd and the people who are still surviving of Floyd, which are, Waters and Gilmore, and what's the drummer's name again? God, I forget his name now.
I don't remember.
Nick Mason.
Mason.
Yeah, Nick Mason. They all were strongly opposed to putting Floyd material on iTunes because they thought the idea of downloading individual songs from the records was absolute stupidity and blasphemy. Now, I can understand it.
Well,
I can understand that, especially for an album like this. Like, you're gonna just go out and buy On the Run. Like, to me, that song, as incredible as it is, that
Mhm.
whole sequence thing. It makes very little sense on its own, but in the grand scheme of it, together with everything else before it and after it, it's just a work of art. Just like
Yeah.
this whole
Well,
album is like that.
they seem to forget though that when the album was out, they released two singles. So there are songs that do stand on their own. Obviously, some don't, but there are some like "Money," for instance. Stands on its own. It was a single, and it did very well that way. So who
Yeah,
knows?
yeah. I mean that's true, but I mean it's also because of the fact of placement as well. I mean, don't
Yeah,
forget that song comes in. It could be played from a dead stop. Just did it. That whole thing at
exactly,
the beginning starts and
exactly.
that's it, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Whereas a lot of the other ones, they're interconnected. They almost splice into one another, right?
yeah.
Now, I believe the other, yeah, it's according to the ever incredibly accurate Wikipedia. The singles that were available from this album were "Money," backed
Hmm.
with "Any Color You Like," which I don't understand why they put that as a B-side, but in any case. Um, and on the second single, which came out February 4th of 74, which was much, much later. I mean, the first single came out May 7th, 1973. I mean, you're talking about
That's a
almost
lot. That's a
a
lot. Oh,
year,
it's a long time. Yeah.
yeah, later that they released "Us and Them" with "Time" on the
Hmm.
backside. You know, now, I mean, the funny thing is what you just said, that's a long time in which you know this single was released, but the fact of the matter is, if I remember correctly from that documentary I watched, the president or then president or head of A&R for Capitol Records
Hmm.
did mention that Dark Side of the Moon was on the charts consistently for something like 20 years, like 750
Oh,
odd weeks.
it was nine. Well, it spent total overall throughout the years. It's been on Billboard for 900 weeks,
Wow.
meaning it could have fallen off and gone back on, but the amount of weeks it's really been on is 900 weeks in all the time period since it came out, and which is a ton.
I mean,
So it's
that's
a
absolutely
consistent
incredible.
seller, basically.
Yeah. Excuse me. Yeah. So there you go. So I mean, whether we you know have our opinions about what we don't like or do like about it, the fact of the matter is it's resonated with a lot of people.
Yeah, and the other thing about the song singles being so far apart, it might have had a slow start at the beginning when it came out. The album kind of didn't, take off right away, and once it started getting, seemed like it was picking up steam, like people were starting to buy it all of a sudden because people were word of mouth or hearing it on FM radio or something like that. Then they decide, oh, let's try to get another single out of it, and they put out the other single. That's my theory on that.
Well, your theory is correct
Oh, it
because
is.
yes, because that documentary again and that
Yeah.
label guy mentioned that they released the record and that it did good, that it came out and that it sold, a couple million. And he said, and quote unquote, I think this is exactly what he said. He goes, for this record to take the band to the next category of sales and
Mm,
next category of stardom, they really do need a hit single off of this album. This album was released March 1st, 1973.
right.
The single was released May 7th, 1973. So that means that there was at
2 months
least
later.
2 or 3 months that went
Yeah.
by before
Yeah.
that single was released. So obviously by that point, maybe it started to level off in sales and they said, okay, we're going to have to go and push this record with a single. And they did. And look what happened.
Yeah. Usually the single comes out before the album.
Yeah.
You know,
But but
it's
they were
strange.
never a singles band,
Right.
this band ever. I mean, I think the first time that they actually did singles was for Piper at the Gates of Dawn. I think was the only time that they put out stuff that were
Okay.
considered singles at that time. I mean, later on, like the records after that, there was like nothing that could be deemed as single material. I don't think. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm sure there was something put out, but
Sure.
nothing that could ever be generalized as a single.
Okay.
So, with that said, Ken,
Yes.
what do you rank this album as far as songs?
songs, I ranked it a 5
Okay, there we go.
based on the, like you said, it just, I mean, and you're talking about playing the CD, it should just flow, it's just the mood, the whole album, both sides, the mood of this album, it just flows so smoothly within itself, and it just takes you somewhere else. It really does. You listen to it, it just takes you to some other place, and it's just, I don't know. From that standpoint, it's just a masterpiece. Even though, like we said, there's a couple of songs that are or connectors there that really don't work, but they work in the sense that it pulled the album together cohesively, so it kept you in that mood throughout from beginning to end. So yeah, again, I may not listen to I may listen to the Rush album more than I listen to Dark Side of the Moon,
Hmm.
because that's just my preference.
Yeah.
But the Dark Side of the Moon, I have to give props to the concept of it, of the album itself, and the flow. So
Very good. Very good. Okay, so that brings us to the next topic, and this might be a topic of contention with people, but that is performance by the band. Now, what I mean by this is, how do you feel the band were performing at this time? Like, how do you think their performance on record is now compared to, let's say, other material or material later or material even at that time? You know what I mean?
yeah,
Um, so while we kind of think about this, I'll go first with what I think about the Rush thing, if you don't mind. Or do
yeah.
you want to go first?
No, go
Okay,
ahead.
so I'll talk about 2112. This record to me, and I'm going to say it right now, I'm giving this a hard 5 for performance, and I'll tell you why. The whole backstory behind this record about how they were being, set to be dropped by their label.
Hmm.
They had great arguments, this and that, with their management and business and this and that. And they were told, okay, you guys got one more shot at doing this, make it count. And they said, screw it, we're going to do another record the way we want to do it, and that's it. This album, besides maybe, I can only think of maybe 2 other records in their whole catalog, and one of them is Fly By Night, that I don't think I've heard them have so much fire and determination in their playing. I mean, Geddy Lee's vocals on this, when he's doing like
Yeah,
Temples of Syrinx, you can tell he's
right.
seriously aggrieved at people at this point,
Yeah.
And like when Neil hits those toms, like they sound like they're gonna fall apart if he hits them any harder, you
Hmm.
know. Like to me, the performances are all there, and especially on side A, you couldn't have gotten them to play that any better if you'd tried. I mean, side 2, definitely there's more um, like songwriting approaches. I mean, you have like lessons, which has like some acoustic guitars, and even that has some fire in it as well. But I mean, the songs that have the serious gusto in is all on side A. I mean, Passage to Bangkok is good as well. I mean, that's kind of more of a tribute to their favorite pastime at that time, I would say, more than
Right.
anything, right?
Right.
But you know, let's just put it this way. I think that if you were to tell a person who had just bought this record that this is a band that was just about ready to get dropped by their label and they were really angry and wanted to make a record that showed that they were angry, I think people would believe it if they heard it. So
Oh yeah.
I'm giving this a hard 5 for performance.
Hmm. Okay. Yeah. And I'm gonna have to agree with you about giving it a hard 5, because I gave it a hard 5 also,
Oh.
for a lot of the same reasons, and because uh, I know you're saying, yeah, they were very aggressive, and you can see they're kind of pissed off. They're going to do things their way, um, but just the musicianship of them, um, uh, so above, almost anything else, or above other bands. So I started to think, well, could Pink Floyd play these Rush songs? Probably not. It would sound the same. No, no, no. That's not saying Pink Floyd musicians are, less
Yeah.
in any way, really. But Rush, they are so uh, on top of their game as far as their instruments that they play, and especially Neil Peart. I mean, come on, this just there's no one that can match him. No one that I know. Um, and Geddy, the bass, and Alex with his guitar. So they were just so next level that no one's gonna match them as far as their performance. Uh, no one. I can't think of anybody. So that's why they're like a hard five for me. Uh, Pink Floyd plays their instruments fantastically on their album, and it's a little bit different style, right? It's more of a laid back style. And I guess having said that, can Rush play Pink Floyd? They could play their music, but they're not going to play that type of music anyway. But yes, they're so good that they could match that style if they really wanted to do it. That's all I'll say about that. But otherwise, they're all good on their own. So that's why I got the hard five for Rush, like you.
Yeah. Very good. Now, in floating over to the Pink Floyd side of things,
right?
Let's put it this way: a lot of the things that we discussed here can be said for Floyd. I mean, but the main difference with Floyd, I think, here is that okay, stylistically they're different. Obviously,
yes.
They're more blues based. They're definitely much more, chilled out in spots. They do a lot of pedal steel and slide stuff. There's a lot more kind of dreamy keyboards going on. Their tempos are really more back than Rush is on record.
Sure, yeah.
And but as far as their performances are good. I mean, I think that David Gilmour is very strong on this record.
Oh yeah.
But I mean, this is what it kind of boils down to for me. I gave the performance of this a 4 for this record because I think David Gilmour's singing is fantastic on this.
Yeah.
I think his guitar playing is exceptional. It's really good. Some of his guitar solos are iconic guitar solos on this record. Okay. But where they get the 4 and Rush gets the 5 is because you look at some of the other people. I mean, okay, Rick Wright, he's keeping that number high for them. He's a great keyboard player. He has all kinds of great sounds. He experiments a lot with stuff. Roger Waters is a great lyricist, and he's the ideas man. I mean, for On the Run, he was the one who kind of started dibble-dabbling with those weird sequencers and stuff and got them to get some of these futuristic sounds. But let's face it, Roger Waters is the weak link vocally. Why they made him sing those last 2 songs, I have no idea. They should just gave them to David Gilmour to do anyways. And bass playing wise, there's nothing going on that any Joe Blow off the street couldn't come and play that bass line. I mean, not to knock Roger Waters as a bass player, but even him himself will tell you that he doesn't think of much of himself as a bass player. He thinks of himself more as a songwriter, right? Not a bass player, right? So there you go. So I think overall, I think while the songs are memorable for sure, and everything about Floyd is iconic and it's connected with people, I think though that performance-wise, this album, as much as it's my favorite Pink Floyd album, I don't think it contains their best performance on record at all. So that's why I give it a 4.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I'll give you mine too. I mean, I agree with you actually, everything you said. And my ranking was also 4.
Very good.
It's funny we matched on that. Yeah.
Okay.
Next.
So that brings us now to a very interesting topic because I know me and you are both very big in the whole, mixing and mastering of records and this and that. And sound audiophile quality stuff.
Mm-hmm.
So we're talking about production now. What album do you think
Mm.
has the superior production job on it? Now we're going to take a look at two vastly different producers here. We're talking about Terry Brown, who co-produced with
Mm-hmm.
Rush, and then you have Pink Floyd, who are credited as production with Alan Parsons, right? Now,
Mm-hmm.
in my opinion, Alan Parsons had more to do with this production than
Yeah,
Pink Floyd did,
I
in
agree.
any way you look at it. Okay,
Yeah.
so really, it's going to be down to Terry Brown versus, down to Terry Brown versus Alan Parsons. So, want to start on this one since I started a couple of the other ones?
Sure. I'll start on it. So we'll start on Rush. Production, Terry Brown. Um, I think the production is fantastic on it, actually, because they were able to incorporate these other moods, again, sounds into 2112 itself, um, like the space kind of sound at the beginning, the water flowing
Mm-hmm.
in the river,
Yep.
kind of thing. Those kind of things, and then even at the very end of like the explosions, right? I think at the end of the side
Yeah.
one, end of 2112, and other things, it just if it all fit and made sense. Um, the separation of the instruments are still there, even though some parts are you're really rocking and loud, and but you can still hear everything. Everything is crystal clear.
Mm-hmm.
Everything, all the instruments, especially the drums. Drums are up, where they should be, and especially
Mm-hmm.
with that kind of drummer, you should, have them out there
Yeah.
to show them off. But you can hear everything. Like I said, it's real even. The vocals sound great. Uh, the response of the priests kind of vocals work makes sense too. So it just all is great. I mean, and that's on 2112 side. The other side, they all work great too. They all sound great. It's all, there's not a lot of extra on the second side, but it's your straight ahead stuff over there, and that all sounds just as good as the stuff on um, side one,
Mm-hmm.
just for sound. So I think it's a great job by uh, Terry Brown, and he always seems to do a great job actually. But so that's the my Rush. Do you want my ranking on it yet, or do
Yes,
you want
of
to wait?
course.
Okay, I'll give you my ranking. So production, I'm going to give you a 5 on that
Mm, okay.
too, because I think it really couldn't be any better
Yeah.
produced.
You know, my opinion of the record is very much the same. A lot of people that I've known throughout the years, mainly like people that who are in my band and stuff like that, like my good friend Jerry, who was a drummer in my band, it was the biggest Neil Peart diehard you'll probably ever meet in your life.
Hmm.
Uh, he loves all the records. For some reason, he thinks that the drums sound a little dry on this record. Now, I disagree. I
Hmm.
mean, back in this time period, uh, this kind of drum sound was pretty popular. This is the kind of
Right,
style. A lot of studios were dry sounding, uh, and the productions were always kind of dry. You think of Fleetwood Mac and stuff like that. All those records are very,
right,
dry rooms and stuff like that. And I think that they took what they had available to them and made it absolutely fantastic. Like you said, the keyboard sounds on here, the special effects, the production as far as getting Getty to sing one way for the character and then one way for the priests, it was brilliant, right? The whole part with them tuning up the guitar from scratch, like an out of tune acoustic guitar, and finding him being able to tune it back into tune
yeah,
is just
yeah.
fantastic.
That's great.
I mean, those are all considered production tricks, right?
Hmm.
So, excuse me. Yeah, so I think that everything that you said, I'll echo as far as that goes, because I really don't think that I can imagine this album with any kind of different production than the one it has.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't think it would have sounded as good with any other production, because you need to keep some of this stuff dry. Think about it. If you had those Priest vocals drenched or in a more wet environment with more verb and stuff like that, it wouldn't have the same impact, especially when you listen to this album on headphones. Man, when he does that, it's just whoa, like it just jumps into your ears,
Yeah. Yeah.
When he starts doing those things like don't annoy us further, it's like holy shit, like it's unbelievable how it just pops into your eardrums when he does that stuff,
Yeah.
And even songs like Twilight Zone, when he goes into the chorus, he goes that na na na, and he does that last chorus.
Yeah.
When he does the last chorus where he does it, you have entered. There's a whisper voice in there in the back. Goes,
oh yeah.
You have entered. Like and it's really in your ear when you're listening to it on headphones. It's like whoa, like you never notice it when you're listening to it on speakers at home, but when you put the headphones on, it's like wow, all of a sudden somebody's like behind you talking. It's like wow, like and that's the kind of thing that a good producer will help the band visualize and get on record, right? So I agree. For me, it's a hard 5.
Okay. Yeah.
So okay, so Floyd. Now this is going to be the interesting thing. Do you want to go first again with this?
I'll let you go first on the Floyd.
Okay.
I'll let you do this.
Alan Parsons was a very young engineer at this point, but I think that he made his mark as an engineer, and an engineer that people years even later will remember him for this record. I mean, Steven Wilson hired him primarily on the fact that, he did this record. You know what I mean? So that's got to tell you something right there. I mean, back then, they didn't have a whole hell of a lot of technology. I mean, they had compressors and they had verbs and they had delays and stuff like that. But the technology was not nearly as high as it was even in 76 when Rush did 2112. Okay. But Abbey Road always had good gear. They had good microphones, which is essential. And, they had a good board at that time too. And, they had a 16-track machine and they went ahead and did it. I mean, some of the things that they did on this record is unbelievable. Like that whole tape loop for Money with that like when they show you with the guy holding that microphone stand, the tape going around the machine, around that mic stand. I mean, come on.
That's crazy.
That's like production tricks that were beyond what people were doing in 73. Okay. It was just unbelievable. And like, the idea of Roger Waters going around with a little hand recorder and asking all these musicians in the canteen at EMI all these random questions, and then having those questions put on in between certain songs. Right. Like the girl saying that she punched out some guy, or that janitor at the end said he's not afraid of dying, and this and that, right? Like all those things make this album iconic. And the most important thing about this record is that reverb sound that they have throughout this whole record. I mean, that's the one thing that Roger Waters said that he had an argument with them when they did the final mix of that. He thought it was way too wet sounding. He would have preferred a much more drier mix of the record. And I disagree totally with Roger Waters with that. As I do with most things. I don't agree with him on many things.
Yeah.
But I think that he would have made a huge mistake if they would have went that way with it. And, they even brought in an outside mixer, I believe, to do the final mix because they couldn't agree with the way Alan Parsons was doing it. So they brought in another guy. I believe it was, I don't remember his name, but it's going to bother me that I don't remember it. I'll put it up on screen because I'll look it up after. But he came in and he was on the documentary. He said, too, that he just came in, he cued a few things, did a few things. He said most of it was there already, right? But what he did was he just gave it that nice verb throughout the whole thing,
Yeah.
And to me, I always look at it this way: that sound of that record, when you put it on your headphones and you listen to it, it's like a warm blanket.
Yeah.
Listening to that sound.
Yeah.
It's just unbelievable how that sound of that record transports you to somewhere else totally when
Yeah.
you're listening to it. So again, I mean, there's no other ranking that I could have probably gave this record except a 5 as well, because I think both of them
Mhm.
had stellar production for their time periods. I mean, don't forget, this is 3 years difference in
Yeah.
time, and the productions I think are equally as good for what they were trying to go for. They're two different records. One is totally sci-fi, and the other one is a story about humanity and stuff like that, and
Yes.
things and topics more very personal than a story
Mhm.
about outer space, right? Well,
Right.
it's not so much about outer space. It's also about democracy and stuff like that as well,
Sure.
right? But
Yeah.
it's all based around a sci-fi theme, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but I have to say, I'm putting down my ranking is of course a 5 for this record.
Mhm. Mhm. All right. Well, I I have to agree with you about the production and sounds of this record. Yeah, like you said about the people's voices they recorded, or you hear people the laughing
Hmm.
and other stuff that comes in here and there. It's just very interesting. Um, but yeah, the mood of the album, the way it ties together, and it's the whole concept. I mean, it is a concept album, one full album. It's the whole thing is the concept. Yeah, like you said, humanity and money, greed, uh, just all different kinds of emotions throughout the album. Um, so yeah, I agree with you, and I also ranked it a 5.
Oh, okay.
Also,
There we go. We got a 5 as well. All right. So that brings us to the last
mm,
category of this. And that
yeah,
is public opinion, sales, our opinion, etc., etc., etc.
etc.
So let's start off with 2112. Now, I'm sure, just like me, you probably have some sort of,
Stats,
stats on your computer about how it did, and so on and so forth.
sure,
So I guess we'll let you start
I
off
do.
with 2112 if you want to go ahead and fill
Sure.
us fill us up to date.
Well, yeah. So, obviously April 76 it came out. It did on the U.S. Billboard charts. It got up to 61. That's
Okay.
how high it got.
Yeah.
As of I think today or now, it sold 3 million copies,
Mm-hmm.
which is
Hey, 3 times
very
platinum.
very decent for a band that was about to maybe lose a record
Pack it in.
contract. Yeah, and back then too. So, but 3 million copies, 61. Um, I guess to go through it, 2112. I want to say uh, it's more of a cult following, kind of like Rush itself, the band, in a
Mm-hmm.
way, has their own unique fans. Um, it's not a band that was really, um, what do you want to say, popular in the sense of a like pop band, popular.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, they're more of again, a band that's has their own little army. And it's kind of like like a Kiss army, but a Rush army. I don't
Yeah.
know what they call themselves in the Rush, but I know there's something they call themselves. But anyway, the fans. But anyway, uh, it's more like that cultish kind of thing. People that were with the band early on, they stuck with them kind of throughout the years. Um, some dropped off and went back on. I kind of fell off actually, probably in the 90s, early 90s, late 80s or something like that, because I was kind of always wanted that 70s, Rush,
Mhm.
the late 70s Rush.
Yeah.
You know, when they went from, for instance, the perfect Rush for me was 2112, Pharaoh the Kings, and
Hemispheres.
Hemispheres. Those three is like a you know trinity for me.
Hmm.
For Rush, it's like these. That's what I wanted them to keep doing, that kind of stuff. And then, but they progressed to whatever, they grew out of that, I guess, and did their more, singles type. Tried to do more singles type music, or shorter songs, less concept. So yeah, they stepped away from the concept album altogether. Except if you moving pictures kind of concept, but still it's more individual, shorter songs.
Mm.
So yeah, I think it gets pretty good reviews in general from people that definitely they're fans, but the general public. I think. Is this the one that was 22 on top Rolling Stone top progressive albums? This ranked number 22, I think.
Okay. Yeah.
On the top. I don't know however many it was
Hmm.
um, on Rolling Stone, but it was 22. Where Pink Floyd actually was ranked number one on
Hmm.
that list. But um, even though they ranked another Rush album higher, than this. So anyway, it's I think I don't know if I want to give my rank. Yeah, I give my ranking for this. I just think it's just because of it's not out there. It didn't sell as many copies as Pink Floyd, um, and some people just didn't get it, as far as reviews either. Just or couldn't get it or couldn't stand Geddy Lee's voice or whatever it may be,
Yeah.
which it was a turn off for a lot of people actually. Not for me, but I put it down as a 4 because now over time period, all the years, it kind of stands the test of time as one of their greatest achievements.